Welcome to the phase two refresher. Hopefully, it can help you to build your portfolio of evidence, to finish off any remedials that you have, and just to give you a chance to be able to complete it. So, we're going to phase number two. So, phase number two, the first thing that we looked at, so remember, this is what it looks like. It's sort of towards the back middle of your file, and we're going to scrape through all of the checklists. So remember, the checklist is there to make sure that you have completed everything. So always, before you submit anything, make sure you go through the checklists and that you have covered everything that you are supposed to cover. But we can go through the unit standards. The unit standards is not something that we need to know. But when you get to this little table, I want you to please be able to go there. Right, so that little table has been explained by your facilitator, but there are notes that will give you exactly what you need to fill out. So if you went to your phase two notes, you would be able to see something like this. So in your motivation section, you will see, okay, there's a motivated team and there's a demotivated team. These are the things that happen in a motivated team. These are the things that happen in a demotivated team. You'll see those first things are easy to measure. The second things are important, but not that easy to measure. So you choose any five of those things. Okay, so what you'll see is if you go to your portfolio of evidence, there'll be space for five of them. So what shows you that there is a lack of motivation? You would go to that chart and you would look at five things that show that there is low motivation. So you would list those. Then you would tell me, how do you try and get rid of those things? So let's say poor quality. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that there is a lot of quality control. Perfect. How do you know? There's lots of absences. So what are you going to do? We're going to have back to work interviews to make sure that people are not ill and that they're not demotivated. So for every lack of motivation, you give me one way of trying to eliminate that specific indicator. Then you look at, how do we know that there is high motivation? So it's the opposite column, and you'd be able to list five reasons that you know that they are highly motivated. Then you tell me, how do you keep on promoting that? So let's say this one, they always hit their targets. How do you do that? Well, you reward those who are hitting their targets. You give them half day off, you give them financial bonuses. Oh, okay. And there is a low rate of staff turnover. So people work for long times. So how do we keep that going? Well, we give um, long service awards. Okay, now that should keep people coming back to work. So over here, lack of motivation. Over here, how do we know that there is high motivation? You go to your notes, you'll see that there are tables that look very similar to this. And then you just tell me, how do you try and eliminate it and how do you promote it? Okay, then why should we have a motivated team? Now, you're going to give two examples from your own experience. So, anything that you have seen that a high motivated team can do that a low motivated team can't do. So, a highly motivated team, they go above and beyond. They are prepared to come up with new ideas. They are innovative. So, anything that you have seen in a motivated team that you have not seen in a poorly motivated team, that's why we like highly motivated teams. Okay, over here, you had an opportunity in class to think about your own strengths and your own weaknesses, about your team's strengths and your team's weaknesses. So over here, you are going to fill in some of your strengths. Okay, so let's say it's creativity and you are someone who's honest and that you are someone who's very skilled at admin work. Those are your strengths. Maybe your weaknesses. No, you don't like conflict. Sometimes you are too much of a perfectionist and you procrastinate and you take too long to do things. So that's your self development areas. Those are the things that you need to do better. Then your team strengths. What do they do well? Well, our team, they collaborate really well together. They meet socially after work. They come up with new ideas. But the self development areas, Sometimes they don't say what's on their mind. Sometimes um, they push back against change. So, what are those things that they have to grow in and become better at? Then you are going to talk about two different theories of motivation. Now, those have been explained to you by your facilitator, but they are in your book. And the way that I like to do it is you pretty much start with the name of the motivation theory. So you've got Maslow's theory, Alderfer's theory, or Hertzberg's theory. Once you put down the name, you go Maslow's theory of hierarchy, needs hierarchy, and Alderfer's theory of ERG. Then you're actually going to put in the picture. So there's some nice pictures here. Over here is Alderfer's, okay, and over here is Maslow's. So what you pretty much do is you show us that there is a ladder of needs, and so you can put this picture in there and you write out the picture. Then you give me one example of how you would use that. Well, in order to motivate people, you need to build their confidence by making them feel recognized and valued. Okay, so that's using Maslow's theory to motivate people. Or I like to motivate my people through making them feel safe and secure, and that keeps them motivated and that they produce better. Okay, so now you have said Maslow, you've given me the picture, and you've given me an example. Then you might go to Alderfer and you say Alderfer's ERG theory. Then you're going to put in this picture. Then I want you to think of an example. Now remember, Maslow says we go up the ladder, whereas ERG says that at different times in our life we change our needs. So we'll say, okay, well, there are times in our lives where maybe we've lost a job and the existence factor becomes the most important in our lives. Or some of my workers, they only really are able to give me their best performance when they feel like they belong. And we need to make sure that there's always a sense of belonging in our team. Or you can say, I make sure that their health and safety needs, which is existence needs, and their team needs are always fulfilled, and therefore my people can grow. So, what you're pretty much doing is you're giving me an example of how the ERG theory works in practice. Okay, so that is how you answer that next question. Then you're going to take this little sketch, and you again you did work on it in class. So you tell me about your team. Now, where is the biggest negative impact? So does your team get very negatively impacted by conflict? So out of 10, give it a mark, and then you mark it off over there. So let's say it's a 9 out of 10. You're going to put your mark there. Personalities, you know what? They all work really well, so there's no real negative impact of personalities. Skills are some of my guys aren't skilled, so we're going to give them a 7 out of 10 in terms of a negative impact. So you go through those different factors, you tell me what kind of negative impact they have within the team, and so the level of effect is then marked off. Is it a 0 out of 10? Is it a 10 out of 10? Somewhere in between, and you mark it off. Then what you're going to do is you choose your two highest, okay? So maybe there's a 9 out of 10 and there's a 8 out of 10. Those are the two. Then you're going to put them in here. Choose two of the top rated group dynamics and discuss why you believe they affect your team to the level that they do and how this affects your team motivation. So what you might do is you might say, there's a major problem with conflict because the guys don't know how to have conflict, and the emotions get really high, and then they don't talk to each other, and then it stops collaboration, which has a negative effect on my team. Or some of my people are not really skilled, and so they can't do the jobs that they need to do, and this has a negative effect on the motivation of my team. So you look at your two highest, and then you tell me why they have such a big impact on your team. All right. Now that you know where there are issues in your team motivation, what I want you to do is to think of a motivational idea. So we've looked at Hertzberg, we've looked at Alderfer, and we've looked at Maslow. And so maybe one of those needs is what your team needs to deal with. Maybe they don't have a sense of belonging. They don't talk to each other. They don't collaborate with each other. Or they don't feel safe and secure in their jobs. So you think of a motivational idea that's going to help with the motivation levels of your team. So let's say they need to bond. You're going to create a team building braai at the end of November, and that you're also going to do some brainstorming on how we're going to build this team. So you're going to have an end of year braai by the end of November, and at that braai you're going to do brainstorming. Okay, great. Then you tell me what you are going to do. So you're going to create a day. You're going to get everyone to bring their diaries. Okay. So what you do is, okay, we're going to decide on a day for the braai. Who's responsible for this step? It might be Johnny. What do they need? We need to check everyone's diaries. Can a SOP help you with this step? Probably not. And then what date is completed? Then we're going to make a list of things that we need to buy. Who is responsible for this? Maybe it is Richard. What do you guys need? Well, we got to create the list of goods that need to be bought. Can an SOP help me with this? Well, if you need to ask money from finance, maybe an SOP can help you. And then you're going to put that SOP in there and you are going to tell me when you complete it. So you give me some steps towards creating a more motivated team based on the idea that you're proposing. Okay, now when you are implementing that plan, before you start the plan, you have a team discussion. So you discuss some points. Guys, why do we need to meet together? Why do we need to have a team building? Maybe that's your discussion point. Then based on the discussion, you come up with some comments. Then at the bottom, the team is going to put down their names and their signatures and dates. After you've had the team building, have some discussion points. How did it go? Are you guys feeling more comfortable together? Do you feel more motivated? Those are discussion points. What are the observable changes? People are talking better together. They trust each other more. Great. What corrective actions might reinforce this plan? Maybe they need to have some one on ones. Maybe you need to create a second opportunity. Maybe you need to brainstorm some problem areas. So that might be able to reinforce the motivation level. Then again, your team will sign and date at the bottom. Your manager is then going to put in any comments that they have, as well as their signature and the date. Okay, so that is motivation. After motivation, what we did is we prioritized time and work for yourself and for your team. And so over here, you will see what the unit standard requires. Please make sure that you complete all of those things that they have asked you to complete. Tick it once you have got it in your file and you are ready to submit. So we can go past all the unit standard information and we can go to phase 2, page number 57. This is where you do a personal task list. Now, again, it is something that you've done on your formative section, and you say, what is the purpose of your task list? So what is the purpose of your personal task list? Maybe it helps you to plan every morning. Maybe it gives you focus. Maybe it gives you direction. But give me a reason why it is good to have a personal task list. Then again, you're going to put down all your tasks that you have to do for a specific day or a specific week. Prioritize them, one being the most important, all the way down to hopefully 5, which is not the least important, but the 5th most important. Then you tell me why you prioritized it in that specific way. What is the criteria that you used? Then, in order to do that specific task, what resources, info, or documentation do you need in order to complete that task? Now, if any priorities change during the week or during the day, you are going to tell me why it changed and when it changed. So, changes priority, new priority assigned, and the date that it did. If it didn't change, then please just write nothing changed in that week or no changes in priority, because any empty space and the assessor is going to ask questions. Again, your manager will sign and they will date. Now, this is for your team. The first one was for you as a person, as an individual. This is for you as a team. So, what is the purpose of this task list? Well, for a team, it also keeps them focused. It helps them to plan more efficiently. It allows you to delegate tasks. It lets them collaborate. It allows them to um, make independent decisions. All of those things are very good. When you have a team task list, you put it up and you allow people to be able to action those specific tasks. Then, in a specific week, you're going to list those tasks that have to be done by the team. So you list the task, let's say finalize report, but then you also give me the date that it was added to the list. So let's say action report, and that was put down on the 23rd of September. Then, the same as the one above, you're going to prioritize it, one being the most important, up to five being the fifth most important. Then, what resources, info, and documents do you need in order to action those specific tasks? Then you tell me why you prioritized it in that specific way. And over here, you're going to tell me who is it assigned to. So if you have a nice big team, then you can allocate those different responsibilities to different people. If you have a smaller team, you might see the same names pop up. Now, you put down their name and they sign next to it because then they're saying, I will take responsibility for that specific task. If during the week there's been changes to priorities, you're going to put in that change over here and you are going to put in the date in which it's changed. And then in that specific week, you'll tell me which day it was completed, that specific task, which day was it completed. At the bottom, again, your manager's signature and the date. Okay, so now you are going to do some time management. So over here, the first thing is, why should we keep a diary? What is the purpose of keeping a diary? Well, it allows you to keep notes, make appointments, plan your day, plan your week. It allows you to write down notes, important information. You can put down meeting minutes. All of those things are important in a diary management. Okay, so part of the portfolio of evidence is that for 1 week, even if you don't normally keep a diary, I want you to keep a diary for 1 week. Now, if you don't have a specific diary, if maybe you have a project book, one of those black cover books, then just write the date at the top and then explain everything you did with times. You can then print those out and you can put them in here. So there's going to be 5 days worth of diary entries. Then you need to provide evidence that some of those things happened. So let's say on Monday, you at 9 o'clock, you said you had a meeting. Well, give us the minutes of that meeting. Or maybe you can print out the invite to that meeting. Then you say, I worked on a report between 1 and 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Well, give us a copy of that report. Maybe you say you did a health and safety checklist on Wednesday morning. Well, then insert one of those checklists with the date on it. That allows us to make sure that the report is accurate or the diary is accurate and that you have managed your time properly. Okay, now over here is where you're going to introduce that evidence. So insert a week of your diary and the evidence that some of your diary events occurred. Right, now for 10 days, you are going to keep a record of your time log. Now we'll get to that a little bit later. And they're going to ask 5 questions based on you intentionally being able to manage your time. So remember, you're going to now use a diary more effectively and you're going to answer 5 questions. So now that you're intentional about your time management, what has changed because of managing your time? How has this benefited the organization? How has this benefited you? What 2 changes would you still like to make to actually free up more time or to be able to use your time most productively? And then the last one is, what are your time wasters and what are you doing about those time wasters? And it could be unnecessary meetings, it could be traveling time, it could be people are disorganized. And so, how are you going to make sure that they don't waste your time anymore? Okay, now over here is where you do your time estimate. Now, part of the process in the classroom, was to work out what you actually do every day. So all of us spend some time doing personal things, like having a cup of coffee or a smoke or checking Facebook or getting a phone call from your mother-in-law. Then we also do other people's jobs. Sometimes people aren't there and we have to fill in for them, or maybe we need to do their jobs in order to get our jobs done. And then time unaccounted for. Unfortunately, there is always things that happen that we can't remember what happened, and we call it time unaccounted for. But then I want you to think of 7 other things that you do on a either daily or weekly basis. So things like meetings, attending to emails, writing reports, doing risk assessments. So you know the 7 things that you do the most at work and you write them down. Then you take an estimate of how many minutes per day you spend doing that specific task. So, how much time do you think you spend doing personal things? Maybe 15 minutes a day. Other people's jobs, maybe half an hour a day. Time unaccounted for, maybe 15 minutes. Planning, maybe 1 hour. Meetings, maybe 30 minutes. And you give me an estimate of those other 7 things as well as these first 3. Then what you do is you take those minutes per day and you times them by 10, and that's going to give you a 10-day total. Okay, then you have got what we call time logs. So there are 10 time logs, and that's there for you to be able to look at your time, analyze your time, and be able to then work out what you spend doing during a normal day. So the first thing that you do is you check the 3 priorities that you want to do during the day, 3 things that you want to get done. Then you tell me what is the most important priority for that specific week. Okay, so it all has to feed into your targets. Then at the top here, in these different columns, you will take those 7 extra tasks that you spoke about. So let's say planning, meetings, emails, reports, traveling. You put down those ones at the top. Okay, and then you have personal, other people's jobs, and time unaccounted for. And then in your day, you're going to try and work out how much time per day you are spending doing planning. So let's say you come to work at 7 o'clock. Between 7 and 7:30, you spend 30 minutes planning. You put your 30 minutes in there. Then you spend 20 minutes doing other people's jobs. Then you spend 10 minutes doing personal things. Then at 8 o'clock, you started on your emails. So you spent 60 minutes doing your emails. So what you're pretty much doing is you're logging every hour and what you spent doing in that hour. At the end of the day, you total those up. So let's say you had 30 minutes plus another 30 minutes at the end of the day. That is 60 minutes. Okay, for emails, I spent 60 minutes and then I spent another 60 minutes. That's 120 minutes. So at the bottom, you add up all of those columns and then you can work out how much time you spent doing a specific thing during that day. At the end of the day, you give me a comment about today's time management. So maybe you spent too much time in meetings, or you didn't get enough time to do supervising, or I spent a lot of time on reporting, which meant that a lot of other things went by the wayside. Then at the bottom, explain how your priorities are aligned to those of your manager this week. So if your manager says, well, we're going to be focused on quality this week, then just put down, we are focusing on quality this week. So you must always make sure that your tasks and your priorities are aligned to that of your manager. All right, so you'll see over here, there are 2 time logs. What I want you to do is to please fill in 10 time logs or whatever your facilitator instructed you to do for this specific project. Okay, now at the end of the process, so you've done 10 time logs, you've shown me 5 days of diary entries, you've given me evidence of what happened during those diary entries so that we know that it's accurate. Then I want your team members to give some kind of indication of how well you manage your time. So now you're doing it more effectively. You're using your diary, you're planning things, you're prioritizing things, and your team is watching you and they're starting to take notice. So I want them to give you feedback based on this checklist that we have over here. So your team would then rate you out of 5 for how you use a diary, for how you explain deadlines, for the value of the task list, all of these things. They can also make some comments at the bottom here, and then they will sign on behalf of the team. So get one of your people to sign on behalf of the team, and then they will date it. All right, so then that is your time study. So you've done your motivation, you've done your time. This is just a learner feedback form so that we can get some information about how you have experienced this process so far. So if you can, please fill that in, keep it in your portfolio of evidence, and the assessor will take a look at it. All right, so that is the end of summative assessment phase 2, the portfolio of evidence. So I hope that it went well. If you have any questions, please phone either myself or the facilitator who was guiding you through the process, so that if you have any specific questions that we can help you through. We want you to be competent. We want you to get those credits. We want you to start that journey towards getting a qualification in management. So I hope that has helped, and we'll chat about phase 3 a little bit later.